All right, good evening. We will convene the June 20th meeting of MCE Board of Directors at 6:37 PM. Madam Clerk, would you please call roll?
Belvedere. Venetia.
Oops, hang on. Say again.
Here.
Thank you. Concord.
I am here.
Contra Costa County.
John Joya is going to be late.
Corte Madera.
Here.
Danville.
Here.
Concord. El Cerrito.
Here.
Contra Costa County.
John Joya is going to be late.
Corte Madera.
Here.
Danville.
Here.
Concord. El Cerrito.
Here.
Contra Costa County.
John Joya is going to be late.
Who? Tanya.
Right, Chucks.
We're trying to address the echo issue that we can hear in Concord. So in case folks in San Rafael can't hear it, that's the reason for the delay.
Yeah, and I think it's possible we might be getting feedback from Director Kohler's mic. If you'd be able to mute Director Kohler when you're not speaking, that might help. I also want to double check that you don't have a live feed going on your computer of the meeting, because we are hearing a little feedback from you, kind of a delayed repeat of everything being said.
I'm not, I'm unmuted.
Okay, great. And as long as you stay on mute when you're not speaking, I think we'll be okay here. But if you're continuing to have an echo, you might want to dial in again and we can try promoting you to a panelist a second time. So sorry for the trouble.
Corte Madera.
Here.
Danville. El Cerrito. El Cerrito.
Here. Sorry, we were on mute.
Thank you. Fairfax. Fairfield.
Here.
Hercules. Lafayette.
Here.
Larkspur.
Here.
County of Marin.
Here.
Martinez.
Another reason I come back.
Martinez. Mill Valley. Moraga.
Here.
Thank you. Napa.
Here.
The County of Napa and 4 Napa cities.
Here.
Novato.
Here.
Oakley.
Here.
Pinole. Pittsburgh.
Here.
Pleasant Hill.
Here.
Richmond.
Here.
Thank you. Ross.
Here.
San Anselmo.
Here.
San Pablo. San Rafael. San Ramon.
Here.
Thank you. Sausalito.
Here.
Solano.
Here.
Tiburon. Vallejo. Walnut Creek.
Here.
Quorum established.
Thank you. Our next agenda item is board announcements. Are there any board announcements this evening? Don, are you seeing any board announcements on your side in San Rafael?
None here in San Rafael, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to public open time. The next item is public open time. This is an opportunity for members of the public to comment on anything that is not on the agenda. Do we have any members of the public that would like to speak? We do not have any members of the public here in Concord. Do you happen to have any members of the public in San Rafael?
No public comment here in San Rafael. Thank you.
Anything over Zoom?
I see no raised hands, Chair.
Okay. All right. Well, we are moving on to our next agenda item, and that is a report from our CEO. I'll pass it over to you, Don.
All right. And this evening we've got some visuals to go with the CEO report. So this'll help give you all a little bit of extra context. So let's get that slide deck up. And I want to start off by letting folks know that MCE has launched a new website. We've done a little bit of a brand refresh, and the new website is intended to really improve the customer experience. It's gonna, it includes, well, I shouldn't say it's going to because it went live already, but next time you hop on there, you'll notice that it has streamlined navigation. We have a new rebate and incentive finder pathways that are to make it really easy for folks to find rebates and incentives, both for MCE incentives, local, state, and federal offerings. And also we have multiple language translations available to enhance accessibility to folks in many speaking many languages. And I'm wondering if we can get the slides up to add to the overview here. I believe we've someone is working on that. So okay, I'll keep rolling. And maybe I'll skip back. There's a great slide that goes with visuals. So I'm gonna circle back to that once we get the slide deck up. But I wanted to let folks know also that we have exciting news about a grant award. We have a $380,000 grant that was just awarded from the Marin Community Foundation. This is a 2-year grant, and it was awarded just last month. It starts this month, so June 2024 through June of 2026, and it's focused on training the next generation. That's the name of the grant. The focus is on Marin's green workforce. It's going to include 80 students broken up into 4 cohorts with 18 months of mentorship and job placement support for graduates. So we're really excited about this. It's great for the students, but also great to create more depth in the workforce around green technologies. We're really lacking in a few areas there. So we're excited to be sparking that. And the partners that we'll be working with on this grant include the Lime Foundation, Next Gen Trades Academy, the Association for Energy Affordability, AEA, and Strategic Energy Innovation. So we're very excited about the grant. Thanks for getting those slides up. And let's circle back to the previous slide, because I just want to say one more thing about our brand while we're looking at the colors here. We updated the color palette inspired by flowers and colors in our service area. So if you're interested in learning more about that, you can look at the details on this slide, but it really is a nice reflection of our service area. We've also updated our graphic that shows how MCE works, that's more from a customer perspective. The graphic we used to use wasn't as customer friendly, and this one gets you down to the real nitty gritty where you're plugging in something to an outlet. That's the customer experience, and that shows what happens behind that. So those are a couple of highlights from our website, but if you take a few minutes to spin through it, I think you'll be really impressed with some of the great changes. We're also using a lot of local art. So we have a lot of programs and we've got a lot of photos of the great things we're doing in the community. So we're pulling from those bucket of art that we've already got for our own use. And that's been a really nice upgrade as well. So let's skip ahead now to that. Yes, thank you to that slide. So we have a couple of pending federal earmark requests that I wanted to let the board know about. We have a $1.5 million request for e-bike incentives, including cargo, adaptive bikes, and safety equipment. This is a request that we submitted to Senator Padilla. And MCE would also create at least 4 local community partnerships to support rider safety education with these funds if it is awarded. So we'll be tracking that process. It takes a while to hear back about these. So we'll keep you all posted. We also submitted an earmark request for $2.62 million for emergency water heater loaner program. This is also with Senator Padilla and Butler. And it would allow customers who need an emergency water heater while they're waiting to get a heat pump water heater to have something to fill that gap. And we're hoping it would create more of the time needed to get the newer technology, and finding a contractor who can install it. That sometimes takes a while. So this loaner program should be a big help there, and we'll let you know if that funding comes forward. We should be hearing sometime in August or September whether the requests have made it into the final Senate appropriations package. So we'll keep you posted. And then next slide, I wanted to talk about our bill credit update. You may remember that your board approved a $5 million credit going towards the MCE CARES program. This is a $20 monthly credit that goes to all homes that are enrolled in CARE or FARA, and $25 a month for small to medium-sized businesses that are on an A1 or a B1 electricity rate. Approximately 13,000 enrollments have already happened so far. We did auto enroll over 2,500 residential customers who had past due amounts of 500 or more. And the program is open to other eligible customers to enroll now. So spread the word. If you're aware of small businesses that might benefit from this program who might not already know about it, let us know. We can reach out or send the link that is provided here on this deck to those businesses. And let's skip to the next slide. I just want to show sample bilingual marketing materials for businesses. This gives you a sense of how we're marketing this CARES credit. And we're really trying to get the word out through multiple languages in all of our communities. So feel free to help us spread the word. If you have a blog post that you like some information to plug in, or a newsletter, let us know. We've got lots of good content. And next slide, I just wanted to give a quick update on the income graduated fixed charges. This is something we've been talking about a couple of times this year, as there's been a couple of proposals put forward to add a fixed charge to electric bills on the PG&E side of the bill. Just wanted to let folks know that we do have a final CPUC decision on this, and the fixed charges will begin showing up on bills in first quarter of 2026. MCE is going to participate in an upcoming public workshop that's hosted by the investor-owned utilities to talk about marketing and education around this fixed charge to make sure folks know what to expect. And just to give you a sense of the scale of this fixed charge, on average, all CARE and FARA customers, these are low-income customers that have to apply and qualify for those programs, we expect them to see monthly bill decreases. So that's a really good outcome. The increases are expected for all other MCE customers, but the range is, between $2 and $9 per month on average. So the majority of our customers will see about $3.50 per month of an increase. Some customers, about 18%, will see as high as a $9 a month increase, and it really is tied to climate zones. So it's where you live is going to be what drives what your fixed charge is. So let us know if you have questions about that. And then the last slide here is really exciting. This has been in the works for quite some time. We are going to have an open house at one of our virtual power plant homes in Richmond. We've had a few homes now that have completed the process of getting upgrades, getting all the smart appliances installed. But this is the first home that actually is big enough to host a tour and has some good parking at a nearby church. So we have picked today, August 6th is the day that we're going to host this press conference. All of our board members are invited, of course. It's open to the public, and it's going to be really inspiring. Just as a reminder, the virtual power plant program takes homes that are abandoned or in need of disrepair, buys them, refurbishes them, gets lots of smart equipment installed, including heat pump water heaters, HVAC, solar and batteries, EV chargers, and then auctions them off to, or actually there's a lottery, not an auction, to keep the prices affordable. And they go to first-time homebuyers in Richmond. So really exciting program. It's MCE's way of walking the talk a bit on trying to make sure that communities that have been impacted negatively by the energy sector can be some of the first communities to see some of the benefits of our transition into a more green economy. The new homeowners of these homes can participate in our virtual power plant and get energy savings by shifting their usage to the hours of the day when it helps the grid, and that provides an ongoing financial benefit to these homeowners. So really exciting program. I encourage folks to come out for that. And then the very last thing I wanted to mention, I don't have a slide for this, but we are planning the MCE retreat for the fall. A doodle poll went out on Monday, but we've only gotten two responses. Kay Patrice Williams gets the gold star. Director Williams replied, and her favorite day is October 24th. One of the dates, I believe, is Rosh Hashanah, so I think we're going to take that one out, but it's getting down to September 26th or October 24th. So check your calendars. If you want to vote for your favorite, look for that doodle poll or give me a call. We'll probably be picking a date very soon so that we can save it on your calendars. We will be holding the retreat in Pittsburgh at the Yacht Club, which has a great view of windmills in action and is right next door to a couple of battery facilities, one of which is at a school. So we're hoping to do a little field trip in the afternoon. It should be a great event. Let us know your favorite day, and I'll be looking for an invite to save the date for that. That is it for my report. Happy to answer any questions.
I have one quick question. Donna, who would have sent the email out? I don't know if I've gotten it.
It would have come from the board at distribution list. Darlene Jackson sent it out, but it should have come from the board at. I can certainly resend it if folks haven't seen it yet. I think, okay, I see a few nodding heads.
Yes, please.
We'll send it out again because that did
Thank
seem
you.
like a bit of a low response rate. Yes, the Director Feynman.
Thank you for this report. I am super interested in attending the virtual power plant event on August 6th. And I know we've received a lot of presentations that have been like really information dense about the VPP model, but I think this is the first time I'm realizing that actually MCE is like buying houses. And I think that's a really interesting model. And I'm fascinated to learn more either offline or in some other capacity. So I just wanted to put that out there as I'm personally curious. Maybe others are as well.
Thank you so much for raising that. I should clarify that we are partnering with the Richmond Community Foundation and the City of Richmond and a couple of other entities. And it is the Richmond Community Foundation and the city that are actually purchasing the houses. So I think I used the term "we" a little too loosely there. So I appreciate you asking about that. The role that MCE is playing is the smart electrification building upgrades and then running the virtual power plant after those are installed. So that's the role we're playing, but we do have a lot of great partners helping with the purchasing.
Okay, thank you. I think that makes a lot more sense. I still think it's really interesting and would be happy to talk more offline.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hello, can I just speak? I have my hand raised. It's Gail
Yes.
from Richmond. Yeah, a question about the August 6th press conference. Where is it going to be held?
It's going to be held at the home. I do not have the address or the neighborhood, but Alexandra, right beside me.
Thank you. Great question. Actually, for the location of the event, as you can imagine, we do want to protect the homeowner's privacy. So in the invitation, there will be directions for how to arrive, but we are minimizing the address for now. It's filled with a lot of great stuff on the inside, and we just don't want to put too much of a target on them. They have a lot of nice stuff on the inside.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense.
Are there any additional questions for Don?
Hi, I was wondering if you could just comment a little bit on utility rates and power, just the rates that we're purchasing power at and the trends.
Yeah, absolutely. That has been a real focus of a lot of dialogue this year. Rates have gone up, particularly for for PG&E and the other investor-owned utilities in California. Fortunately, MCE's rates have remained stable for over the last year. But we are seeing a lot of pressure on prices, and in the market, purchasing power, we're seeing a lot of upward pressure on prices. We're hoping that that will start to stabilize, but there's really a shortage right now of renewable energy that's partly driven by a lack of access to transmission and interconnection. So there are quite a few renewable projects waiting to be interconnected into the grid, and that's causing a shortage, in addition to some regulatory challenges that have created a bit of a bottleneck for accessing renewable energy. So it's definitely having an impact on us. I think we've done a pretty good job of building in some stability into our budget, so we haven't had to raise rates this year. But if trends continue, we may need to adjust rates upward possibly next year. But it looks like we're going to be okay for the time being. Many of the rate increases are happening on the transmission and distribution side of the bill, and they're related to upgrades to the infrastructure for delivering power, and those we aren't able to control.
Thank you, Don. So I just want to circle back on the retreat. Can you give the dates again?
Yeah, the two options are September 26th and October 24th. Those both fall on a Thursday, and the time frame would be between 10 and 3, 10 a.m. and 3 p.m.
All right. So everyone look for your doodle poll, and hopefully we'll receive another one tomorrow so that we can lock in a date there. All right, we will move on to item 5. Our consent calendar. Are there any comments from board members with regards to the consent calendar?
Yes, I'd like to turn your mic on, please. Yes. Don, could you comment on item C4 for us, please?
Yeah,
Don,
yeah.
I was just going to see, did you need me to do we want to remove that one, or are you just going to discuss it? Okay.
I'll defer to Catalina on that. Do we need to remove it?
No, absolutely not. We can have comments, and then if that requires further discussion, then we can remove.
Sure. Okay, so as some of you already know, our former treasurer, Garth Salisbury, resigned MCE and has moved on to work with a different CCA. So we are going back to our previous treasurer appointment, who's Vikin Kasarjian, our Chief Operating Officer. He served as treasurer prior to Garth, so we're just reverting back to putting him in that role.
I have some comments I'd like to make. And I'm going to read this only because I want to make sure I get my point across, but I am a little concerned that the chief operating officer will also be the treasurer for the company, primarily because if we take a look at a lot of the regulatory framework and best practice guidelines, there's mandates and in some cases strong recommendations to separate financial from operations, and that bothers me a little bit when we're looking at merging those responsibilities. Two, I think effective governance, and we've always have talked about effective governance, requires proper checks and balances. And I worry here that you give too much power to one individual that would oversee not only the operational side, but also the financial side of the company, and that could potentially lead to conflicts of interest. The third is, well, as we take a look at just pure bandwidth, both of these positions require intensive, if not full focus, especially when we're dealing with the millions of dollars of investments that the company is currently, addressing. And to expect someone to be able to do both, I think would be concerning, because something's going to get lost in at some point. And so I do worry about that. The fifth, and I think it's one of those that if we get into discussion about risk of errors and fraud, it always bothers me that we don't have what we consider the best practice guidelines in place for proper governance or corporate compliance with corporate compliance and governance, and that there is room for interpretation or doubt because we have an individual, or in a situation where we have an individual that oversees both of these areas. So I can go on, but I think you get my point, that effective governance does require proper checks and balances. And I think taking a look at this recommendation here, I worry that potentially it could cause some lack of trust by our stakeholders, if not shareholders, but more importantly, it's just not the right thing to do.
Chair, I recommend at this time we pull this item off of consent and have the items C1, C2, and C3 and C5 be considered on the consent, and then we can continue the discussion for C4 just to make sure that all comments are being heard.
Thank you.
I'll move adoption of C1, 2, 3, and 5.
I will second that motion.
All right. Madam Clerk, please call roll.
So Perkins and Nakamura. Thank you. All right. Anisha,
Yes.
Concord,
Yes.
Contra Costa County,
John is still not here.
Corte Madera,
Yes.
Danville,
Yes.
El Cerrito,
Yes.
Fairfield, or Fairfax, sorry about that.
Yes, Fairfax.
Fairfield,
Yes.
Lafayette,
Yes.
Larkspur,
Yes.
County of Marin,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Moraga,
Aye.
Napa,
Yes.
the County of Napa and 4 Napa cities,
Yes.
Novato,
Yes.
Oakley,
Yes.
Pittsburgh,
Yes.
Pleasant Hill,
Yes.
Richmond,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
San Anselmo,
Yes.
San Ramon,
Yes.
Sausalito,
Yes.
Solano,
Yes.
Walnut Creek.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Jessica. So now we will go back to item C.4 resolution. And if there's any additional discussion around this item, or if Dawn, you wanted to share to respond to the two directors here in Concord, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, happy to. I can just provide a little bit of background and certainly any alternative suggestions could be made. But I will point out that Vicken Kasarjian, our COO, was served as MCE's treasurer for quite some time before Garth Salisbury was hired on. And so that's why we were simply at this time just looking to revert back to what the board had put in place previously. Also, as another item, which we'll discuss further down on the agenda, is I wanted to just provide a very warm welcome to Maida Strauss, who is sitting right beside me and who's taking on the Director of Finance role in filling Garth's shoes, and also Efren, who's at the end of the table here helping out with the finance team. We're in great hands with the rest of the finance team, so I wanted to note that. But in order to not pile too much onto the finance team at the beginning, we discussed internally that it might make sense to have Vicken take on his former role for a period of time while that transition is underway. But certainly open to other ideas. We were just going back to where the board had been before with our treasurer role.
A question over here in Marin. Are we okay, Chair, through the chair?
Yes.
It's Director Rice. So Dawn, the way you phrase that, it almost sounds like it's a more of an interim appointment. Is the intention to go back to the model of with the chief finance officer being the treasurer? Is that the intention?
Yeah, I think that would likely be the next step. Yeah. So thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, I understand. I think that Director Fong points out, and to have separation is important. I think that if there's a best practice piece there, not being a business person, but just in terms of oversight roles and optics, even with people of the greatest integrity and background. And I'm wondering if, as a modification to the proposal, that the title be interim, if that would be satisfactory to Director Fong and others, and actually maybe put some sort of timeline on it. Just throwing that out as a suggestion, or if you have any other suggestions as to who could serve as treasurer at this point, because we do need to have an assigned treasurer.
Yeah, I think that suggestion is a good one. And I'd also like to just take a moment to convey that the chief operating officer doesn't have, while the finance department reports up to the chief operating officer, there isn't a decision-making authority around rates. I think that's what Director Fong was referencing. So maybe I'm not seeing where the conflict of interest is likely to come up. It certainly didn't come up in the past, and it's not something that was flagged by our auditors. But putting the interim title on it certainly sounds fine if that creates more comfort. I also wanted to respond to the comment about best practice guidelines, which is maybe a different topic. But I just wanted to remind Director Fong and the board that we do have best practices guidelines for CCAs that have been developed, and they live on the Cal CCA website. MCE was actually a very big contributor to creating those best practices, but they've been vetted by a lot of stakeholders around the state, including financial corporations, credit rating agencies, and that sort of thing. So just wanted to remind folks that those are available, and I'm happy to share them again with you, Director Fong, or with anyone who's interested.
Director Kohler?
Yeah, thank you. I think Director Fong raised some really good points. Having sat on this board for a long time, just for those who don't remember or weren't here, for a while we actually had a board member be treasurer. And while that person was a great board member, she did not have financial expertise. And at that time, when that came up again, I think I even raised it, that we really needed financial expertise. And I think that's when we first appointed Vicken to that role. And then subsequently Garth I was going to suggest Maida take on that role, but I think, Dawn, you point out that there's a transition going on. So I do like the suggestion of maybe a 6-month interim appointment, and we revisit this. And I do think it would be a good idea to see those best practices again as a refresher. I have to be honest, I don't think I've ever seen them, but I would like to see them again if I have forgot. So I think the interim idea for 6 months might be the way to go for now, and then revisit it then to make sure that transition has happened. But there is the option of going back to a board member with expertise. I think the difficulty with that is the continuity, because we're not always on for a very long time. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Director
this is
Brown? Director Brown?
Yes, I apologize. It took me a while to get to the unmute. I would second the Mayor of Fairfax motion. I agree that it should be interim, and a specific time frame of 6 months sounds reasonable. And then if need be, we can come back. But I think there's too much out there that there might be an optic. So I would second her motion. Thank you.
Chair, may I add just one component? So this appointment is only for a year to begin with, and then you all revisit this. And we typically set the appointment to happen around budget season. So we would already be considering to revisit this in February, March of next year, which I think is slightly longer than the 6 months proposed, but just wanted to throw that out there.
Director Fong?
Yeah. So I'm all about moving forward, and I absolutely agree that we need to highlight the fact that this is an interim solution. But two, if in fact, practically speaking, there may be decision points or issues that require Vicken to be both COO and treasurer, that there be a second line of sign off before anything is approved for this interim period of time. Just again, I think it's practical, and two, from the optics perspective, it shows that this company is adhering to the governance system. During the interim, we've got to do what we got to do, but we're also going to make sure that we have some checks and balances in place to ensure that we're not at risk.
Yeah, and I'm also happy to add a couple of more points for clarification. So the treasurer main responsibilities are to also report out to this board, and so they'll be providing the monthly investment reports. We do have a separate investment vendor that I think Maida could speak to. So we have additional third parties. We've got our external accountants as well that support it. So there are multiple factors coming in to support these decisions and roles. And we're following our investment guidelines that have been approved by the board. So the treasurer is really just carrying out the guidelines that have been approved by our board. And then we also have our third party auditor to make sure that the checks and balances are happening. So just to add those points.
And I would agree if we could add a couple more lines. It's one of those, unless you connect the dots, people aren't going to recognize that there are already best practice principles that are in place to more than check these decisions that are being made.
Madam Chair, this is Director Beckman. May I ask a question or share some comments?
Yes, please.
Thanks. I appreciate the comments and share some of the concerns that have been raised. I would definitely support making this current appointment interim in status, all for following best practices, but want to make sure that we're following the relevant or correct set of best practices. So I just wanted to confirm with staff, having a COO as treasurer, that is consistent with CECA best practices, even if it may not be for other types of businesses. Is that correct?
Yes, and it's commonly the case with other CCAs as well.
Great, thank you. So in that case, I can support the proposed action, and I would just note that I would definitely like to keep the treasurer role with staff.
Director Kelman?
Great, thank you. And thank you for that, Director Beckman and Director Fong. I just want to put my voice in the room as well, that I do think it is important to have those checks and balances. Staff outlined, I think, a good plan of attack for articulating that and letting the general public know that we have that in mind. I would certainly emphasize the distinction between the role of the finance director from the treasurer, from the third-party auditors, within whatever board motion that we make, so the general public does understand that. The best practices can be very murky for members of the public, particularly if they do differ from, say, municipality, which is, I think, what I heard Director Beckman suggesting, and I wasn't familiar with the additional best practices. So I think anything we could do to create clarity for the general public and not leave any doubt that we're really watching ourselves here and adhering to full transparency and accountability is welcome. And I think staff, you articulated, I think, the right plan of attack. And I just want to thank Director Fong for pursuing this question.
Okay. So Catalina, I have a question. So you mentioned that it would be longer than 6 months. So it sounds like it'll be about 8 months.
That's correct. Yeah, we have this on our calendar to do annually. And it's usually around the budget season. So right now we're introducing this because Garth Salisbury has resigned. And so that's why we're revisiting it earlier. The appointment is technically for 1 year. And that's what it says in the resolution materials that you were provided. So, but we typically readdress this on our schedule in the budget cycle. So that'd be around February or March. So we'd be planning on bringing this back to the board in February or March. Or if there was an alternative, we could adjust the resolution to have an interim and indicate a time frame.
Director Brown?
Here's my confusion. Obviously, I didn't get some paperwork because I would have thought a staff report would have indicated everything that we've had on this discussion. And if that did not happen, or there's been more added to the discussion in terms of making sure there's paperwork. So in 2 or 3 years, when this might happen again, we have the information on what we've done. So if it has gone out, somehow I didn't see that email, but if it has not, we need to, with everything that's going on, I'm really kind of hesitant, and I'm kind of thinking of different stuff that's happening at a lot of different elected officials. I'm thinking of the current mayor right now of Oakland, if you had a chance to pay attention to that in the news.
Thank you, Director Brown. The resolution does indicate that the appointment is done once per year. I believe the staff report does as well. And I believe the staff report was included in the packet. I can locate that and find a page for your reference as well.
Madam Chair, this is Director Beckman again. If it pleases the chair and there's no further board or public comment, I'd be happy to move adoption of resolution number 2024-03, appointing the COO as treasurer.
Actually, I do have a question here.
Thank you, Director. We have your motion on the floor. There is a question by Director Kohler. She had her hand up via Zoom.
Yeah, I just think, why don't we change the resolution to say 6 months? And that actually is good timing because Maeda will be in the middle of the budget beforehand. And she's been doing this work for a long time with Garth. So rather than say February or March, why don't we just pick a 6-month time frame to revisit it? And just, I just think it would be better for us to be more accurate as to what we're thinking of. So if I were to suggest a friendly amendment to Director Beckman's motion, I would say with one change, that you would change the resolution to say a 6-month period.
That works for me. And I also, you're reminding me that I meant to add that I'd like to propose this adoption with the amendment of adding interim to the title.
I mean, with that, I would second that motion unless somebody else wants to.
Yeah, I have a comment. I believe General Counsel Murphy suggested adding a couple of lines to the resolution that makes it quite clear that there are proper checks and balances in place during this interim as well. More of a reinforcement, if not a reiteration of our practice.
Yes, I'd be happy to add those components.
Yeah. And then the other comment is someone said this is an acceptable CCA practice. That's CCA is an evolving entity, and the whole segment of business is an evolving entity that continues to grow. And when we all kind of step back and put our what we call our practical hat on, think about the right thing to do as you represent MCE as well as how we operate. And I do worry that what's accepted may not be the right thing to do today.
Director McCormick?
Yeah, I appreciate the last couple of comments we've had about the time frame because it was sounding like we're going to call it interim, but it wasn't going to change the time frame at all. So then what's the point of being an interim? So I think interim makes sense only when with a time box to either, we can revisit in 6 months. We may end up extending it, but I think it's really important to have a checkpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Chair, may I just confirm? So I have it as a motion to adjust it to be an interim for a time period of 6 months and to include a line item that identifies the checks and balances that we've mentioned here today.
Correct.
Correct.
Director Brown?
So I would feel more comfortable, more comfortable under Robert's Rules of Order that the motion that's on the floor is a move to a substitute motion because I seconded what I thought the Mayor of Fairfax's motion was, and that was the main motion. So I would prefer, and I can't see everybody who's speaking coming up, but where I'm going with it is that if whoever is making the current motion would say, I move a substitute motion, then when we vote on that, it becomes the main motion and then we're fine. I have a real hard time sometimes when we throw out ideas of having a motion and a second, and then we don't adhere to Robert's Rules of Order. So I just wanted to throw that out. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Brown. Unfortunately, I did not catch Director Fairfax as an actual motion. I heard it as a proposal.
I just, excuse me, Catalina, sorry for interrupting. This is Barbara Kohler Fairfax. I didn't make a formal motion. It was just an idea. And basically, I capitalized on what Supervisor Rice or Director Rice said. So I think the motion on the floor right now by Director Beckman is correct. And Monica, I'm sorry if I wasn't clear when I was speaking. And I'm happy to second that motion with the amendments we talked about.
Not a problem there.
And so that is with you, Chair, to approve that as an emotion, and then we can move forward.
So we have a motion by Director Beckman and then a second by Director Kohler. All right. Madam Clerk, please call roll.
Benicia,
Yes.
Concord,
Yes, with appreciation for this conversation, I'm voting yes.
thank you. Contra Costa County,
Supervisor Joya is still not here.
Puerto Madera,
Yes.
Danville,
I just need to have a repeat of this motion because I kind of went brain dead a few minutes ago. I wasn't listening. I apologize.
no worries.
I'd be happy to repeat that, and then I'd love to just have Director Beckman to confirm before we make sure that we've got that correct. So I have it as change it to an interim appointment for a period of 6 months and adding line items that have the checks and balances that we've discussed here today.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. El Cerrito,
Yes.
Fairfax,
Yes.
Fairfield,
I appreciate this discussion and yes.
thank you. Lafayette,
Yes.
Larkspur,
Yes.
County of Marin,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Moraga,
Aye.
Napa,
Yes.
the County of Napa and 4 Napa cities,
Yes.
Novato,
Yes.
Oakley,
Yes.
Pittsburgh,
Yes.
Pleasant Hill,
Yes.
Richmond,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
San Anselmo,
Yes.
San Ramon,
Yes.
South Salado, South Salado, Solano,
Yes.
Walnut Creek.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Director Fong, for bringing that to our attention. It was great discussion. Moving on to item number 6, board members' additions to the committees. This item will be introduced by Chief of Staff Jamie Tuckey.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. Happy to be bringing back this familiar item tonight. There's a roster included in the board packet, and it includes an up-to-date roster and listing of all of the board members in each of the committees. It reflects the changes that we made at last month's board meeting as well. And we've brought this back tonight in response to a couple of requests from board members to join committees. And it's also an opportunity for anyone who would like to join a committee, or anyone on the board, of course, who would like to join a committee or change their current assignments. So we can start with the technical committee. And I know that Director Kohler has expressed interest in joining this committee. And Director Kohler, can you confirm that you would like to join the technical committee?
Yes, I would. And just to note that my alternate may be attending at times. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Are there any other board members who are interested in joining the technical committee or changing their assignment to the technical committee? If so, please state your name and your community now. All right. We don't have any current requests for the executive committee, but I'll pause and see if there are any requests to join or change membership for the executive committee. All right, and moving on to our ad hoc committees, we do have a request from Director Perret to join the Ad hoc Capital Projects Committee. Director Perret, can you please confirm?
Director Perret is not present tonight, but
Ah.
he did confirm with me that he'd like to be on this committee. So
Thank you, Dawn.
yeah.
Okay. Are there any other requests to join or change membership in any of the ad hoc committees?
I believe we may have, oh, please go ahead.
I just
Director
wanted to note, this is Director Beckman. I just wanted to note, I am interested in joining the ad hoc capital committee, but I understand that if I did, there would be a quorum of the executive committee on it. So I just kind of wanted to lodge my interest for future reference if and when another executive committee member drops off. And then I also, as a general comment, just wanted to ask, is there a way that we can put this item on consent in the future? It feels like we've done this like 2 times in the last 3 months or something. And I'm just wondering if, for the sake of everyone's time, it would be possible. I don't know if there's a Brown Act issue, but if there's a way we can figure out for staff to kind of wrangle these, nominations from board members ahead of meetings and then just put them on consent, I think that would be awesome.
Yeah,
Happy to-
that's a
Oh, sorry, go
great
ahead,
idea.
Dawn.
I was just going to say that's a great idea. And I want to flag that we might have another interested person here from Ross.
I was interested in the capital committee. This is Matthew Salter from Ross.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay. Are there any other requests? All right. In summary, the requests that we have tonight are to add Director Kohler to the technical committee, Director Perret to the ad hoc capital projects committee, and Director, I'm sorry, what was the director from Ross?
Salter.
Director Salter also to the ad hoc capital projects committee. Thank you very much.
All right, so
Chair, I believe we need a motion on
Yeah.
that.
I was just gonna ask, do we have any public comment before we move forward with that motion?
I see no raised hands online, Chair.
All right.
So I'll move to amend the committees as we discussed.
Second.
All right. So you have a motion by Director Darling, second by Director Meadows. Please call roll.
Benicia,
Yes.
Concord,
Yes?
Contra Costa County, Corte Madera,
Yes.
Danville,
Yes.
El Cerrito. El Cerrito. Fairfax,
Yes.
Sorry,
this is El
Cerrito, yes.
thank you.
Yes.
Fairfield,
Fairfield.
thank you. Lafayette,
Yes.
Larkspur,
Yes.
County of Marin,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Moraga,
Aye.
Napa,
Yes.
the County of Napa and 4 Napa cities,
Yes.
Novato,
Yes.
Oakley,
Yes.
thank you. Pittsburgh,
Yes.
Pleasant Hill,
Yes.
Richmond,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
San Anselmo,
Yes.
San Ramon,
Yes.
Sausalito. Sausalito, Solano,
Yes.
Walnut Creek.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. All right, we're moving on to our last action item for this evening, item number 7. We have MCE proposed deferral to MCE's operating refund fund, which will be introduced by MCE's Director of Finance.
And I just wanted to offer a warm welcome to our new Director of Finance, Maida Strauss, who's been with us for more than 6 years and has been part of the conversations about this item at the technical committee, or I'm sorry, at the executive committee, and has been leading efforts here. So I'll turn it over to you, Maida.
Thank you, Dawn. And good evening, everyone. So this item, item 7, we discussed the item in the last executive committee and which voted to recommend a 30 million deferral into the operating reserve fund for fiscal year 23-24. So this transfer is to create an important and cushion against future financial uncertainties, to provide rate stabilization, the financial stability of the organization, and also to help maintain steady rates for our MCE customers. The operating reserve fund policy was approved in November 2019, and it permits to defer revenue in years when financial results are strong, such as this fiscal year, to be used in future years when financial results may not be as strong. And that would allow us to maintain financial covenants and other financial requirements. We are confident the MCE is complying with GASB 62 regarding the setup, implementation, and disclosure of the fund. Our external auditors, the name is Baker and Tilly. They were involved in the setup and they provide guidance on GASB 62 compliance and the whole filing of the fund. Our annual audited financial statements present the related activity and provide proper notes disclosures. And this is done every year that we have our financial audit. So as required by the resolution, and the policy, the ORF policy, the MCE board must approve the transfer of revenues to and from the ORF. So now we are asking to transfer. Since the creation of this fund, the board has approved deferrals of revenue 3 times, totaling 30 million. Fiscal impacts for this item would be to reduce the addition to net position from approximately 190 million to 150 million and increasing the balance to our ORF fund to 70 million. Staff recommendation is for your board to approve a deferral of 40 million of revenues in the fiscal year of 23-24 into the ORF fund. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. Are there any questions from directors? Director Meadows? Oh, Director Fong.
Oh, again, question I have is, what would be the events or activities that would trigger the release of funds from this operating reserve?
So for instance, if we have a heat event and then we don't have a strong financial year, we can transfer funds from the fund into out from the fund into that year's financial results. So basically, let's say our net position was going to be -10, we can transfer 20 and be 10. So that would be an event that we would transfer it out. And that also would could help us not to have a temporary increase of rates to meet in that specific heat event, to cover for that heat event. So that would be another instance that we could use the fund.
So I believe in the document that was sent to us, it highlights when there's potential rate adjustments would trigger a release of funds. And I guess you explained it well. It's much more than just rates increasing. It's the fact that our financial statements now are being, adversely impacted, and therefore we're using the operating reserve to offset that delta.
That's correct. Yes. And that would be for any bond covenants we have to cover or any other financial requirements. We could use that and not default and not impact the financial health of the organization.
Okay. And finally, obviously, this board would have an opportunity to review all those line items that are adversely impacting our financial statements, which more than would support the release of those funds.
Absolutely, yes. And
Okay.
hopefully we don't get to this anytime soon, but insurance, let's think about some internal insurance. And yes,
Okay. Thank you very much.
you're welcome.
Are there any additional questions from directors in San Rafael?
I see no raised hands, Chair.
All right. How about any public comment via Zoom?
I see no raised hands, Chair.
Do we have a motion for this item?
I'll move it. Barbara Kohler, Fairfax.
Motion by Director Kohler.
Second.
Can you please state your last name?
Yeah, second, Gabe Paulson, Larkspur.
Thank you. All right. Please call roll.
Thank you. Benicia,
Yes.
Concord,
Yes.
Contra Costa County.
Not here yet.
Thank you. Corte Madera,
Yes.
Danville,
Yes.
El Cerrito,
Yes.
Fairfax,
Yes.
Fairfield,
Yes.
Lafayette,
Yes.
Larkspur,
Yes.
County of Marin,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Moraga,
Aye.
Napa,
Yes.
the County of Napa and 4 Napa cities,
Yes.
Novato,
Yes.
Oakley,
Yes.
Pittsburgh,
Yes.
Pleasant Hill,
Yes.
Richmond,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
San Anselmo,
Yes.
San Ramon,
Yes.
Sausalito, Solano,
Yes.
Walnut Creek.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Jessica. Next is our annual energy efficiency report. Our MCE's Manager of Regulatory and Reporting will introduce this item.
Thank you and good evening, everyone. I'm Clay Valerie, Manager of Regulatory and Reporting, and I'm also joined online by Alex Valenti, Manager of Customer Programs. Will be co-presenting. Today, we wanted to share MCE's 2023 energy efficiency portfolio results. We'll be going over some sector highlights, as well as giving an update on an upcoming program that we'll be launching in the commercial sector, and wrap it up with some questions and answers for you all. So next slide, please. So starting with our 2023 expenditures, MCE spent about $8.7 million in energy efficiency funds and committed about $7.5 million, totaling to about $16.1 million. And I wanted to explain commitments to everyone for a little bit. Basically, we're able to carry over our energy efficiency funds into subsequent years when we have projects that are under construction at the end of the implementation year. And so we carried over about $7.5 million into the 2024 implementation year. A large percentage, or the commercial sector makes up most of that $7.5 million. And that's because we're implementing a program design that's called normalized metered energy consumption, where we work with contractors to install measures and then measure those savings at the meter over a period of 12 months, and then pay the contractors based on the performance of those savings over that period, rather than based on like average savings that we forecasted. So that kind of just explains the commitments. And I guess moving on to the other impacts here. Oops, I'm still on the same slide. We can go back one. We reduced about 32 metric tons of CO2 emissions, which is equivalent to about 6,400 cars off the road. Of the $8.7 million spent, $2 million were issued as rebates to our customers at about 1,500 sites, and we achieved about 5 gigawatt hours of savings, or electric savings, and 311,000 therms, or gas savings. Next slide, please. So I'm going to jump into some sector program highlights. I'm going to start with the residential sector. We have 3 programs within our residential sector. The first program here is our multifamily energy savings program, which is a low-income program where we work with property owners at affordable housing or restricted properties to provide comprehensive upgrades in common areas, as well as in the units at those sites. Last year, we completed retrofits at about 9 properties, serving 653 units. And then we also were able to reserve 8 additional properties by the end of 2023 to complete in 2024. The Single Family Home Energy Savings Program is a moderate income program with the range being between 200 to 400% of the federal poverty level. This is a no-cost direct install program for these customers. And a lot of the measures that we do here are stuck ceiling, attic installation, and electrification measures as well. And I will add that about 10% of the customers that were served through this program received electrification measures. So we were happy to see that. And then lastly, with the Strategic Energy Management Program, this is a multifamily program that has no income restriction, and this program really just started gaining traction last year. And so we were able to enroll 10 multifamily properties through this program. 8 of the 10 have received assessment and 2 have started or we're measuring their savings for. So that wraps up the residential sector. And can we move to the next slide, please? With our workforce development program, we have a Green Workforce Pathways program. With the workforce development sector, we have a Green Workforce Pathways program where we're working with contractors to fill the gap in the energy sector, as well as job seekers who are facing employment challenges. Next slide, please. And last year, we were able to work with 37 job seekers and 5 contractors providing electrification job training and infill training with those contractors. And the goal is to pair up the job seekers with the contractors as they're each receiving their training through the program. And I will pass it on to Alex Valenti to talk about the next sector highlights.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Alex Valenti, and I am Manager of Customer Programs for our non-residential suite of programs. So covering the commercial sector, we have 3 unique programs. The first one is the Commercial Energy Efficiency Program, which is actually one of MCE's longest standing energy efficiency programs. Last year, we were able to serve 41 small and medium businesses. This program really focuses on interior and exterior lighting primarily, but we also delivered projects related to HVAC upgrades, boilers in a community center, as well as window film, which helps reduce thermal impacts due to the sunlight. The next program, our commercial energy efficiency market, the commercial efficiency market is the NMAC program, that normalized metered energy consumption program that Quay was referring to. That's a new program. As mentioned, it's a pay for performance program, which is really a great program because it pays on the actual grid impact of those energy savings. So we're able to increase our participation in that program year over year from 2022 to 2023. So we doubled participation. We've also been able to observe project sites long enough to find out that the actual savings observed is 115% of what that forecasted savings is. So great to see that our contractors are able to install projects that actually exceed what the anticipated savings are. Lastly, we have our Strategic Energy Management Program, which touches on many different sectors. So this one focusing on the commercial sector. We had 11 new customers enrolled, and 5 of those were cities and counties that are members here of the board. So exciting to really encourage energy savings, both with our customers and with our member jurisdictions. One thing to point out, the SEM program, which is really focused on behavioral and maintenance improvements. So it's not capital projects, but actually optimizing energy uses at the individual sites. A lot of times customers actually take those savings and reinvest it. So we saw that very significant impact in actually promoting additional savings through other energy savings measures. Next slide. So looking at agricultural industrial, we also have a strategic energy management sector focus for industrial. So we had 7 large industrial plants that were involved in the program. They were able to deliver about 36,000 in rebates from those savings measures. One thing I'll mention, there was a industrial process that involved boiler upgrade, which had a significant, actually the majority of the therm savings in our portfolio from that one maintenance upgrade. So pretty interesting to see that existing systems can still really be optimized to drive savings. From the agricultural sector, we do have a little challenge there with getting participants. One way that we tried to get into that market segment is we had a cooperative of dairy farmers and other farmers in Marin County get together and do a little bit of a think tank. So we were able to identify some measures and as well as some customers to recruit them to participate in programs. Next slide, please. And as Quay mentioned, we do have a new program. I wanted to take time tonight just to let everyone know. It is now has a new name. It was referred to as the Commercial Equity Program. It is now the Small Business Energy Advantage. And it is an equity program that's really focused on delivering at no cost energy savings as well as energy audits and also deep rebates for some more costly measures. And this program will be rolled out throughout the service area, but we'll do intensive marketing campaigns and campaigns where we go and do neighborhood walks. So commercial districts will be identified and we'll work with our community development managers and staff of cities to be able to coordinate any other efforts that are going on, as well as just encourage local stakeholders to come out and help promote the program. I'll also mention that we're aligning with community-based organizations and we're providing financial assistance for those identified organizations to come out and also promote the program. So the idea of really trying to align with community members and reach the hard to reach businesses that have yet to take advantage of energy efficiency opportunities. So this program is really exciting and we're just waiting CPUC approval and authorization to move forward. So we're hoping August 1st will be the launch, but it could be delayed a little bit longer, but excited to break that up. And that is all I have to share tonight. So happy to receive any questions. Thank you.
Are there any questions from directors? Seeing none in Concord. San Rafael?
Yes, Chair. Just a quick question, Gabe Paulson here, Larkspur. First, thanks for the presentation. I thought this was really inspiring. I'm wondering a little bit about a composite way to measure how all these programs are yielding a return. So, for example, the agricultural industrial, there was the $36,000 in rebates that had 160,000 annual bill savings, and at the face of it, that looks like a 400% return on investment. Is there some way to put that like on the cover sheet too? What actually is being delivered on the tax dollar? I mean, there's probably many things like reduction of greenhouse gas and things that are difficult to measure, but I think this would be compelling and a really good narrative for a lot of taxpayers and constituents.
Yeah, I can jump in. So yeah, there are many metrics that are used for evaluating programs, cost effectiveness being what we're really held to with these CPUC funded programs. So yeah, we can absolutely provide further information that is specific for individual programs in terms of how they're evaluated in terms of cost effectiveness. The tricky thing there, and we can work on it, is to look at bill savings as part of that, because that is not included in the CPUC's metrics. But I don't know, Quay, is there anything else you'd like to add? I think you're a little closer to the regulatory portion of it.
Yes, one metric that the state of California has moved to is the total system benefits metric, which is basically us looking beyond just how much we're saving, but when we're saving and adding a dollar value to that amount. And so, yeah, that is a metric that we could include in our materials, which is what is the dollar benefit to the grid for that site. So yes, happy to take that suggestion.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I mean, I'm just seeing again, 5, gigawatt hours saved, and just to know how much that is in dollars and cents would be wonderful. So thank you for that.
Director Darling?
Thank you, and thank you for this. So on the strategic energy management, I guess our city is one of those cities, and I was curious, are we expecting to see the similar metric used? Do you use the same metrics for those, because you're measuring behavioral changes? Do you still look at the overall benefit to the system?
Yes, that's correct. I think Alex could speak more to like how the modeling is done to get to that metric. But yes, all of our programs within our energy efficiency portfolio are valued on that same metric. So we could provide that for the strategic energy management program.
Great. We'll look forward to that when our staff gets done doing it and see what we came up with. They were really excited to be involved. So they were all bragging about it Tuesday night at the city council meeting. So thank you.
Yeah, I'll say welcome to the program. And yes, we do report out the therms and the kWh savings with those measures that will be developed. So yeah, definitely will be shared. Quarterly is typically how that's shared with our implementer partner directly with whatever staff is your energy champion and involved in the program. So welcome.
All right. Do we have any public comment on this item?
I see no raised hands online, Chair.
All right. Well, this was a discussion item only. So we will move on to our next item, and that is item number 9. The next is a review of external funding pursuits. Alexandria McGee, MCE's Director of Strategy Initiatives, will lead this presentation.
Wonderful. Thank you. Good evening, board, member of the public. I see you back there. And staff, it's a pleasure to be here with you tonight. As mentioned, my name is Alexandra McGee, Director of Strategic Initiatives, and wanted to give an overview of really the last year and a half of efforts to pursue external funding opportunities, to expand upon the programs that you just heard from our customer programs team. If we could go to the next slide, please. I think it's just important to maybe say the why out loud and up front. Every dollar that we're able to secure and bring in from an external funding source to deepen these programs, be they efficiency, electrification, or decarbonization, allows for us to be more impactful and generate those community benefits, be they environmental or economic, without the need to impact any kind of rate dollars that your board sets. So anytime we can secure a grant and bring it in, we can have a deeper impact in the community and continue this work while maintaining low rates. So we see it as our opportunity to be fiscally prudent while amplifying the message by going after these funding sources together. Next slide, please. So I wanted to perhaps give a shout out to some of the work happening behind the scenes. This is a intense cross-team coordination. There's 7 different departments that meet regularly to make sure that we're all speaking the same language and we're coordinated across our various sectors. So as you can imagine, the policy team has their pulse on what's happening at the legislative level and what kind of money Sacramento might be putting forward. You have the customer programs team who work with vendors, and they're more aware of requests for offers and requests for information that the industry is responding to. Then you have legal teams that have a different vantage point. So we meet regularly to ensure that we all are aware of the unprecedented opportunity that's being unlocked by the Inflation Reduction Act and also the Bipartisan Infrastructure and Jobs Act. This is an enormous amount of money coming down from the federal government. It's trickling down through various departments and also in different forms. You could have grants You could also have tax credits. You could also have partnerships, and there's also loans and loan guarantees. There's also earmarks. So what is the best strategy for MCE in our communities? Some of the money there's a lot of money out there, as an example, for electric vehicles. How are we ensuring we're being smart about what type of funding to go after to make sure that we're, one, keeping administrative burden low and also having the highest impact for our communities? So I think we will get to the big dollars in just a moment. I just wanted to give you a sneak peek behind the curtain because there's a lot of work that goes in before the application even happens, right? There's building relationship with our policymakers. There's responding to requests for information. There's just reviewing the massive amount of grants that are released every single day. I probably look at 3 to 5 different grants that are released from different agencies, making sure that they are aligned with our needs. Then there's conversations with those grantors before they release the grant itself. There's an opportunity to influence to make sure that once it is released, CCAs are even eligible. We think of ourselves quite highly. We do good work, but we're not front of mind for all of these agencies. So ensuring that the grant allows for CCA participation to begin with is also part of that relationship management. And then once we actually have the funds and the funds come through, we want to make sure that all the policies are in place at MCE to be able to go through a federal audit and pass squeaky clean. So developing additional policies and procedures to make sure we're at the appropriate level for that federal level of scrutiny. And then I know it might be quite obvious, but every grant application can be quite long. Some have gotten to 100 or 120 pages in the application itself. So these are the great people behind the scenes doing all that work to ensure that we can go after this fund together for all of our community's sake. Next slide, please. So it's not just staff. We also have brought in some external support to make sure that we're doing so effectively, efficiently. We have some grant writing support recently contracted for, as well as AmpliFund, which allows us to manage the performance of those metrics and the budgets of those grants. And you just heard from Quay. Quay's team helps ensure that once we do get the money, we're being efficient stewards and able to provide the reporting necessary to those grantors. And as mentioned, we're also completing a mock audit of MCE systems to ensure we could pass a federal audit if that ever were to happen. So now we're going to get into the big dollars here. Next slide, please. I'm happy to share that to date of this external funding, and it's important to note that this does exclude the CPUC funding that we have historically been awarded for the energy efficiency programs from the California Public Utilities Commission. So in the last year and a half, we have pursued and been awarded more than $9 million through earmark requests and grants. This ranges the gamut from focus groups to ensure that we are being sensitive to community needs for our electric transportation investments, to ensuring that we have money for healthy homes, that we're addressing mold and lead and air insulation inside the home, to, of course, electric vehicles and virtual power plants that you've heard about from me previously. Next slide, please. We also have a number pending. I will share, and you heard in Don's CEO report, that final line there was just awarded to us. So we can actually move it to the previous slide. That $380,000 for workforce development in Marin has recently been awarded. And these things are in flux every single day. So we are still waiting on a number of decisions from all of these many are federal agencies. There are some local ones as well. But that's about $64 million pending decisions. You'll note that the biggest one here is $50 million of the 64. That is a particularly big grant called GRIP. The Grid Resilience and Innovation Partnership, where we asked to expand the MCE virtual power plant that you heard we are having a press event in the next couple months. We want to expand that from the city of Richmond, where it's currently limited to the city, to all of our member communities, hence the big number there. Next slide, please. And then, of course, it's not just us asking for money. We want to make sure that the whole community is being supported by MCE and our collective efforts to increase efficiency and electrification. So we're working with a number. This is just a small snapshot of everyone who's received MCE support. If there's a member of your community who's seeking grant funding for their purposes and it's aligned with renewable energy or energy efficiency, please have them reach out. We provide these letters of support to mission-aligned organizations and their efforts. So just a snapshot there. Next slide. And then, of course, we are stretching. We are not going to win every single one, but we are learning a lot in the process. So there are a number of proposals where we have submitted but not been awarded. These are included here as well. There's many. I'm happy to explain why we maybe did not get these awards, but I also see it as a mark of MCE staff really pushing the envelope and trying for things which are in the stretch goal area as well. Next slide, which is just a bit more. There's funding. You can pursue funding and you can pursue in-kind support, and there have been some in-kind applications also not awarded. Next slide. And then ensuring that the community knows that we are a resource to them. We attend a number of different conferences to talk about our funding pursuits, but also to offer to support the community's pursuits of funds as well. Just an additional aspect of the community engagement associated with this funding pursuit. Next slide, and I'm wrapping up here, which is that we have 3 more grants on the horizon. To be honest, there are a number of others, but these are the 3 most pressing. One is due in 8 days, one is due in 11 days, and then the other one we're thankfully don't have a deadline for yet. So we have our plates are full, and we are looking forward to continuing to expand this work to serve our communities. And I believe that is my final slide, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Well, thank you for sharing that update. I think it's really remarkable news that we have applied for close to 30 grants and got awarded 18 of them. That's really great. And just to have the capacity around to be able to do that, as you shared, a lot of these grants take a lot of work, and it doesn't come easy for a lot of our community-based and nonprofits in our community. So just wanted to say job well done with applying for those grants. Do we have any directors? Don't see any here. Director Darling, yes.
Just one quick question. As you guys are monitoring the Inflation Reduction Act, have they made progress on the part of the Inflation Reduction Act where cities are allowed to get tax credits, or we've seen that happen yet? It's not tax credits, but it's whatever they call them.
If I could attempt, I think we might be referring to the direct pay provision, which allows typically government entities such as MCE as well, but also your jurisdictions would have been unable to take advantage of tax credits, such as the ITC. I know I'm blanking on what it used to stand for, but essentially tax credits to subsidize the cost and bring down the return on investment for big solar, big wind projects, including some of these more local biomass or hydrogen options. So there has been progress made. In fact, we are looking at that for some of MCE's consideration for purchasing our own assets as well. But the IRS has not yet finalized these provisions, and happy to provide an update to the board at that time. I will be honest in that it has seemed like a wonderful idea. And every time an additional clarification comes out, it gets a little less appetizing for how small the hole seems to shrink for getting through the eye of the needle there. But we are monitoring it, and I can provide an update at a future board should you wish.
That would be great when we finally get it. Because when it first came out, I was like, well, that would be really cool if that was true. And my city manager said, that can't possibly be true then. And so I want to prove myself right. So when it happens, but I'd be interested in hearing.
Are there any questions or comments from directors via Zoom or in San Rafael?
Yeah, Chair Gabe Paulson, Larkspur, quick question. But first, Alexander, thank you. I want to echo, seems like you got a lot of balls to juggle, and I like the, the collaboration between all the teams. I'm wondering if you guys do kind of postmortems or lessons learned. Like I noticed the DOE GRIP was not one, and it'd be interesting to see which CCA won it and why, and that way to target your efforts in the future.
Excellent suggestion. And yes, we do what we call internally pluses and deltas, what went well and what could be improved. So you did see that there was a GRIP application where we were not awarded. In that case, we were a subcontractor to a different entity, it was a partnership with CAISO and PG&E to try and create a more advanced forecast modeling to allow for us to bid more accurately into the markets. We're not awarded. Ultimately, GRIP does tend to be more centralized in its approach. Their awardees have been more successful in pitching essentially a big centralized power plant. And as mentioned, we tend to do things a little bit different. So proposing anything decentralized or perhaps where the sites are very small or residential base did not meet with the historical awards for GRIP. And so we do essentially a postmortem to evaluate what could have gone better. And so when we've reapplied to GRIP this year, we changed the strategy and the partners involved.
Do we have any questions via Zoom for public comment?
I see no raised hands, Chair.
All right. Well, thank you again for the presentation. We are moving on to our last discussion item for this evening. Item number 10, office investment opportunity. This item will be presented to us by our MC Director of Internal Operations.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. I'm very excited to say we hit item 10 while it's still daylight out. Happy solstice.
Yes.
Yeah. We're bringing an opportunity to you tonight. So you'll see up on your screen, this is our building here at 1125 Tamalpais Ave in San Rafael. We have an opportunity on the table to potentially purchase this building. If we can go to the next slide, Dan. Yeah, so to give you a quick summary, we are located in downtown San Rafael. It's very centrally located. You can walk to the transit center, you can walk to downtown shops and restaurants. We have partners in the community such as TAM and SMART, just a couple blocks away from us. And this location is really well poised to serve the west side of our service area. So all of Marin, parts of Napa, Eastern Contra Costa are really commutable and reachable for us to get there, but also for customers and community members to get to us. We have ample parking for a building of this size. It's quite a lot of parking for the city of San Rafael. We also have our beautiful solar carport and EV chargers that we have invested in here. Next slide, please. To give you some background on our leases currently, we're currently paying $4.19 per rentable square foot here in San Rafael for about a little over 10,000 square feet. Our lease is coming to an end in March. And our deadline to give that intent of whether we wish to renew or move forward with a purchase or vacate is coming up in September. To give you a quick snippet of Concord, we are currently paying $2.50 per rentable square foot for, again, approximately about 10,000 square feet. That lease is coming to an end in December with the same deadline for intent to renew. To talk about Concord briefly, we are pulling together some additional leasing numbers, looking at what a renewal would be. The market is very good for leasing in Concord right now, so I anticipate similar numbers would come forward. Next slide, please. And so I just wanted to share some advantages of office investment. We really would have an opportunity to innovate a little bit more here and have an opportunity for a showcase. So we can renovate, make some structural changes that we may not be able to do within a lease. We can showcase the latest in energy efficiency technology. So we could install battery storage and grid management and show people how that works on site. Or even another idea that's been thrown around is a showcase room to exhibit some of the latest energy efficiency technology so customers can come in and touch and feel and see what they can work with for themselves. We would build equity and long-term savings by investing in ourselves, investing in our own portfolio. No more rent payments for this building, which at $419 per rentable square foot would be very nice. We anticipate with early estimates, that break-even point would be around 8 or 9 years. We were in a 10-year lease for this building before, and so the 8 or 9 years goes by pretty quick. I've been here for about 8 or 9 years, and it's been a blink. And we also believe we can see earlier return if we were to, share this space. We have a lot of space we could share with community members who are looking for a couple offices and be a bit of a hub. We would capitalize on a market that favors the buyer. So there's a high inventory of available office buildings right now. The market favors lower prices. We have a bit of an upper hand in negotiations. But we do anticipate that this window may be narrowing. Trends are leveling off. So we do want to act now. As you see, our lease is ending in March, and so we have a decision to make soon. And we're opposed to purchase as a cash buyer. So we wouldn't purchase with loans, we would buy with cash. And save the best for last here. I mean, we're a stable presence in the community. We've been here before. We want to reassure customers that we will be here, that we have that longevity. We want to invest directly into our community. And again, I'd like to bring up the idea of sparking collaboration with like-minded agencies. Next slide, please, Dan. Some challenges here. So there's limited flexibility when you purchase. You can't really change the space size so readily as you could with a lease. Maybe difficult to expand. If down the line we wanted to sell, there's no guarantee that the market would be favorable or unfavorable. And we would take on some additional liability and responsibility. I do have a point of clarification on this slide and in your staff report. I list here that we would take on tax burden. We would be exempt from state property tax, but there may be some local assessments that we would have to pay. We would also take on some additional insurance. We pay for a lot of insurance here, but insurance on the structure would be taken on by us. And then we would be responsible for all property management. Currently, we cover a large portion of it. Our landlord handles basically the foundation and the roof, and we handle everything in between. But there would still be the foundation and roof that we would need to take into consideration. We also would take on any liability and responsibility to comply with the ADA. We have a report on both external and internal requirements for the building, and we'll bring an analysis of those costs to a future meeting. And so if we can go to the next slide, Dan. So we brought this item as a discussion item. Our next steps, we're going to acquire an appraisal, recent sales comparison reports to bring to our ad hoc committee, to bring to a future board meeting. But really, I just wanted to spark discussion and any questions that you may have, things that you would like to see from us. Hopefully you'll be seeing me a lot this summer, and I'd love to hear from all of you. Thank you.
Thank you for that update. Do we have any questions from directors?
I've been following some of the commercial real estate. Yeah, it's on. Commercial real estate, particularly in local press, and it's very true that the office market right now is very soft. If you're a landlord, if you own the building, in fact, in many places, buildings are being sold for 25% of the original purchase price from just a dozen years ago. So the office market is in the buyer's favor right now, and this might be an opportunity to take advantage of that. Yeah, I like the 8 to 9 years. Love to see the numbers go with it, but 8 to 9 year return is a 11 or 12% return on investment. And frankly, we're not getting 11 or 12% anywhere else unless you're betting on NVIDIA or one of those. It's a good place to put your money in, not pay rent anymore.
Thank you, Director Perkins. Director Kohler?
I see. Yes, I talked to Dawn about this briefly, and she asked me to bring up a couple of things. I sit on another board of a nonprofit that is housed in San Rafael. And at one point, it looked like our building was going to be sold about a year ago. And we started looking into prices, rental prices. And even though if you're in San Francisco, probably commercial rental space has come down. It really hasn't in San Rafael. So, we're in a much older building, and I don't know the age of this building, and that's something we ought to look into. But the other thing we looked into at that time was we were also looking at maybe not buying the building, but expanding into the other side. And this was before it was for sure it was going to be sold. And one of the things we found, and it wasn't just ADA, is as soon as we wanted to expand, San Rafael had some pretty extensive requirements that would have been over the top costly for us to afford, putting in new egress through the back, which would have cut our usable space quite a bit, as well as the expense. Now, it is an older building, so we passed on that opportunity because it became so extensive. So one of the things Dawn and I sort of had a little back and forth, and I think Justine mentioned this, is we really ought to be talking to San Rafael now about potential ideas we have and talk to the building official about what kind of requirements and what they would cost. I think that needs to be factored in. I would like to see how old the building is, what kind of ADA responsibilities we might have, as well as some other responsibilities we might have. As soon as you do greater than a 50% remodel, it kicks in quite a few changes. So I'd like to see that when it comes back. The other thing just to think about, I've done a lot, I'm not a real estate agent, but I've done a lot of brownfields work, is have we considered, because September's coming up soon, have we considered the idea of something like a lease with an option to buy, rather than trying to make a decision in the next couple of months? So just something that I would toss out there as questions and what I'd like to see when it comes back to the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Kohler. And if I may answer the question about the age of the building, this building was built in 1949. It underwent very significant renovations and earthquakes, seismic bracing in the 1990s, as well as additional renovations in the early 2000s, and in 2014 and 2015 when we first were moving in.
Thank you. That's good information. But it also says even though all the work is extensive, there may be newer requirements for some of that work as well. So thanks a lot, Justine.
I see we have directors. I'm not sure if it's El Cerrito or Richmond.
Yeah, it's El Cerrito.
El Cerrito.
So thank you for the presentation. I have a question about kind of the impact of facilities management on your staffing. If you purchase the building, do you intend to increase staff to address the property management and facilities management responsibilities that would come with that?
Yeah, so we currently have a staff member. She's in Concord today. Her name is Anya. She's our office manager. She handles a lot of our on-site property management currently required as a portion of her position. The additional requirements of the roofing and of the foundation, we don't anticipate would need us to hire additional staff. We think we could reshuffle a few duties within internal operations.
Thank you.
Director Beckman and Director Feynman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple thoughts here. First of all, I'm wondering if it might be beneficial to us to separate out the questions of whether to buy versus rent, and then if we decide buy, then to have the discussion of where to buy. So that's kind of my overarching thought. With regards to this specific building, which is the item on the agenda, I think the obvious sort of considerations are that it is not central to the service area. So I'm curious to hear what the thoughts are with regards to staffing. Would the plan be to just own the building and have, half the staff be remote or whatever? Would you plan on still leasing a separate office space elsewhere in the service area? Would you plan on ultimately buying an additional office space? So I'd like to hear a little bit more about that. And then I guess my other question with regards to this space, which is also part of the size that it doesn't fit all of our staff, we're talking about potentially giving office space to, I think I heard like community members to like become a hub. I think that's an awesome idea. I think having expo space is an awesome idea, also floated. But I'm just curious, like if we don't even have room for all of our staff here, do we have room for these uses? So I'd just like to hear a little bit more kind of about what the thoughts are with regards to this particular building and what that means for our strategy in terms of like what we're going to do real estate wise. And then I'd also like to hear staff and other board members' thoughts on whether we should kind of separate the questions of buying and renting and then discussing where.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in and comment on a lot of those questions. Your first question about the lease versus buy is a good one. Certainly a great thing to hear board member thoughts on. I think one of the important pieces of information that is helpful to have in that discussion is like, what is the actual cost to purchase? And we will have some numbers soon that we can be looking at. I think that the one element that makes it a little hard to look at it totally agnostically is just the investments that have already been made in this building. I'll give an example that we actually just looked at another building this afternoon that's very similar in size and location, but doesn't have a boardroom, would take some ADA work, would open us up to a lot of code improvements and a lot of costs. So quantifying the impact of renovations really changes the economic equation. We happen to know a lot about this building, but looking at other buildings just with a price tag or a lease payment would be a pretty detailed exercise where you'd have to plug in a few assumptions. But I certainly hear your point on that. To your other question about keeping 2 locations versus 1, great question. I'm so glad you brought it up because we've thought a lot about that over the last year. And, the post-COVID era has led to a very different work environment for a lot of agencies. And we have found that we're finding a pretty happy medium, I think, as far as attracting and retaining staff, where we're not requiring folks to come into the office, but we are requiring folks to participate in on-site quarterly staff gatherings 4 times a year. And sometimes we'll have some other events. There are things where people may be required to be here, but we're not dictating where they live per se. But we do like to have folks all in one place, and staff have told us, and I think the board feels similarly, that when we're all in one place, it's really amazing, when we're not having a screen to another place. So when we do our all staff meetings now, we go to either San Rafael or Concord, but we don't offer both locations. That way we don't have any screens. We just have everyone in a room. And that's been great. We did think about, well, would it be, what is the real center of our service area? Could we find a place that's equally easy for everyone to get to? And after a lot of thinking and talking about it, I think where we landed, and would love to hear the board's perception on this, but we felt like the footprint is so sprawling and Bay Area traffic is no fun, that probably the best case scenario would be to keep an east and a west location, alternate between those 2 depending on what's appropriate, but making sure that both of those locations are easily accessible via public transit and or highway corridors. And fortunately, those were high priorities when we were getting both of our offices set up. So the 2 locations that we have now work very well from that perspective. Both locations need to have a large meeting room, both for our board members, our board meetings, and for our staff gatherings. And both locations would benefit strongly from having what we refer to as hoteling spaces, where staff can come, plop down their laptop, work next to their colleagues, jump into a small private room if they need to do a Zoom call, or if they want to have a 2-person, 3-person meeting, having a few small rooms available, but having a lot of open space where people can work on long tables together. And so that's what we're gravitating towards. And, if we were to use this space for that purpose, that could certainly work. And the Concord space, we'll be talking about that more in future meetings, but just as a preview, we're thinking we could shrink the footprint of that space pretty easily, move to a different floor where there is availability, very favorable pricing in that space, and a bigger board space that would be conducive to board gatherings and hoteling for staff. So that's kind of the big picture vision. We're not looking to change what we require of staff or the board, but we are looking to unless we hear strong feelings differently from the board, at this point, we're thinking that keeping the east and west location makes sense. It provides some alternatives for people that are commuting from the far reaches of our service area. And then your last comment about community hubs, I'm personally really excited about this idea. And it's not a new idea, although we haven't used it much in San Rafael. In Concord, the folks may know that we do rent out a little bit of that space or sublease some of it to Cal CCA. Cal CCA has an office in Sacramento, but a lot of their staff happen to live near BART and near Concord. So they use that space. And having them in the office has created some nice synergies. I've heard from our staff, you can have hallway conversations, you can listen in on each other's presentations. And it's more fun to come into the office when there's already some stuff happening there. We'd like to do something similar here. We've talked to a few public agencies that have similar in that they have they're public agencies, they have board meetings from time to time, so they need a large boardroom. They have staff that don't come in every day, but do come in some days. And we could have some nice synergy just by being in the same building as those staff. I think some of them are transit related. Some are energy efficiency, sustainability related. And as everyone has fewer staff coming in all the time, it creates an opportunity to leverage our space more, because we do have vacant offices a lot of the week during the day. And so we could create that community hub here, I think, by looking for partners that want to collaborate in that. So.
That is super helpful. Thank you. And I'm definitely supportive of both the community hub and the expo space vision. And I will say that, ultimately I will defer to staff to tell us how you guys think you would work best. So that's fantastic. I think my only other question, and you may not know, is totally fine, but just out of curiosity, do you have a sense of where the center of gravity is for staff in terms of where staff live?
Yeah, great question. I think for staff that live in the East Bay, having access to BART is super important. We do have folks that live outside of our service area, say in Oakland and beyond, but again, there's the BART access. Beyond that, I don't know, Justine, do you want to comment further? I just have kind of a rough idea just from the folks that I know well. But.
And asking the question might even just be enough, just that, that's kind of where my head's at is thinking about commutes for directors, but also commutes for staff, and that where you're located, where your offices are located, can be an issue, as you guys know, in recruitment and retention. So that I think maybe more just asking the question to let you know where my head's at, and I know that it's something that you guys are considering as well.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, the Napa office. I'm not sure.
Okay, sorry about that. That took a second. This is Beth Painter, and some of the questions that I had have actually been asked, and I really appreciate that. I think in concept, owning is really a good direction, so I'm really pleased to see this moving forward. But when it comes back, I think it would be interesting and helpful to know, you mentioned that there's a lot of parking there, and that's great, but the parking standards and zoning standards have changed pretty significantly in recent years. And I think San Rafael even recently updated their general plan. So while one of the disadvantages was, maybe some difficulty in expanding space, I would like to know when this comes back, if there is any potential opportunity for increasing the footprint of the building, not immediately, but over time, if it's a concern. I think it would be good to know whether or not there's any potential for that. that is really my only question. I would just say I also am very much in favor and excited about the notion of some kind of a hub. Many of us here in Napa have visited the Advanced Energy Center, which is the Sonoma Clean Energy has a place up in Santa Rosa. I don't know if it would be similar to that, but it's really helpful for folks to get that hands-on opportunity to touch and see and feel. So I think it would be exciting to do that. But again, when it comes back, it'd be nice to know if there is any potential for expansion of the building.
Thank you, Director Painter. I will look into that before we come to a future meeting.
Director Feynman?
Hi,
Ms.
yes,
Hammerfeld?
thank you, Chair. So I think this is a really exciting conversation. It sounds like, a lot of thought has already been put into this. Obviously, there's some big unknowns. But even just the fact that the break-even point is, less than the lease term is an optimistic sign without having any specifics. And I agree that the, Advanced Energy Center really is a fantastic blueprint for what sort of a, an activated space could look like. One of the kind of questions, or I guess not quite a concern, but just one of the questions I have is when this idea has been, I guess referenced in meetings earlier this year, has been in the context of some of the discussions we've had around budget surplus and how do we think about spending that surplus. And I know that there's been, some pretty hearty discussions at some recent board meetings about how we might go about making that decision in an informed and strategic way. I realize this is a little bit time sensitive over the coming months, but I've said it in previous board meetings, and I'll say it again. Is just one of my my personal interest in looking at spending budget surplus has to do with just having some sense for the carbon, like the emissions reduction potential of various options. And doesn't mean it's the, the only factor or even the primary factor, depending on the options. There's so many reasons why other pieces could make sense, but it's just an important consideration for me. And the reason I bring that up now is just because where we've heard the possibility of purchasing an office space come up before is specifically in those discussions. So I guess I just wanted to kind of remind everyone that that's, that we've heard a little bit about this in a different context. And then I guess the question is, and again, without having numbers, I know it's really hard, but where would this put us in relation to that surplus? Because it may be a situation where we need to move forward, more quickly with options that are, the situation that are in front of us. And I'm just, interested in, because I know that there's been interest from myself and other board members and members of the public around, programmatic expansion in certain ways, et cetera. So sorry, that was a long-winded question comment, but there you go.
Yeah, thank you so much for getting into that side of the discussion. And I just have a brief response, and I know we'll have more time to talk about this later. But one of the things that I think because MCE spends so much of our budget on power supply, and because there's so much volatility in the market, the cost of this building is a very, very small margin of our overall annual budget. And a week-long heat wave would cost the same as this building, any given summer. And that's not to diminish the importance of having the conversation. I just want to contextualize it. And I think you're bringing up a good point that, when we do get to the next conversation where we have some numbers to look at, one of the things I want to include is the strategy for how we might do this purchase, which we've talked about a little bit internally, but would love to flesh out a bit more. There is an opportunity now under new tax law to issue bonds for debt via public agency. So we may be able to, the likely best approach for us economically would be to do a cash purchase and then issue a bond. And under the new rules, you have 18 months after the fact to issue a bond, and that would allow us to retain the earnings on our funds, which would be more valuable than actually doing it through traditional debt. So we'll include that when we come back to the board, but I think there's a strategic way to approach it where we're not going to be diminishing our impact on programs. We'll simply be setting ourselves up for more revenue in the future to spend on programs.
Okay, thank you so much. I look forward to learning more.
All right, are there any public comments on this item, Jessica?
I see no raised hands, Chair.
Thank you. Well, this was our last discussion item for this evening. Our next item is board and staff matters. Are there any board members or staff that have matters they would like to discuss at this time?
I brought it to the attention of Chief of Staff Jamie Tucker that the October meeting coincides with the League of California Cities convention in Long Beach. And so getting a quorum for this might be difficult.
Right. Yes, so that might be something to discuss, Don. A lot of us serve on the League of California Cities, or we go out to their conferences. I happen to be one of them. I know Gabe Quinto is another one. And so maybe we can discuss that in the coming days or weeks.
Yeah, thank you so much for the heads up on that. We do have a few times a year where we can skip a board meeting and make sure we're pushing content into the months before and after. So that might be one of those weeks that we can do that. And if our board retreat ends up landing on October 24th, that would be another reason to cancel the regular board meeting. So thank you so much for flagging that.
Yes, thank you, Director Perkins. All right. If there isn't any more items or matters, I will adjourn the meeting. The time is 8:42 p.m. I tried to keep a little daylight out there for you. I just want to thank you all for the great discussion and have a good evening.